holidays. You're going to be seeing Christmas trees coming up in the building soon enough, even though it's before Thanksgiving. Maybe I'm a grouchy old man about that, but I'm trying not to be. So guys, today we're going to be getting into Chapter 6, which is all about collective bargaining. A couple of things to be aware of, though. After we get through Chapter 6, we're going to do our second exam in this class, which will be the same type of format as the first exam. If you study the reviews and listen in class, you're going to be fine. Now here's the trick. There will be a couple open-ended questions like there were last time. It's all based on things we've discussed in class. I went back to the syllabus because, full disclosure, guys, this is my first time with this class, and I realized I crammed too much information into this class. And that's okay, because what we're going to be doing is to cut some of the material out that we were originally going to cover. We're still not going to cut anything vital, but we are going to cut some material out. I am also probably going to kind of truncate a couple of chapters. I'll have a plan for you sometime in the next couple of days in terms of how we're going to run the rest of the semester in this class. Now, the week of the 2nd of December, which is when we go into final exam week, we're going to be preparing for our collective bargaining exercise. I'll be talking to you guys about that more when we get closer to it. As a result, because the end of this class is not a final exam, it is an in-class exercise, your third test in this class will be open book, open notes, and online. So whatever we cover past Chapter 6 will be an open book, open notes, online test, meaning you have a chance to bulk up your test grade. My biggest point in this class, I don't want you stressing about tests. What I want you doing is really getting ready to be an active participant in a collective bargaining exercise. To me, that's more valuable than whether or not you can memorize material if you can actually apply it. Yes, ma'am? We'll be doing it the day of finals at 8 a.m. on 12/13. It's guys, I don't like it either because it's quite literally the last day of finals, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The office, basically the provost office, has made it very clear to us and the faculty that we are not to move our final exam schedule. So this one is out of my hands, guys. Nothing I can do about it. So that's when we're going to be doing the exercise, actually. Sorry about that, guys. It's out of my control. So, but we will, trust me, you're going to be ready for that exercise. We're going to be splitting the group into halves between labor and management. We're going to be doing that on a random basis. So you're not going to be choosing sides. You're going to be assigned a side randomly. And sometime in the next week or so, we'll be covering that exercise to know what will be expected of you. Again, guys, I apologize for the schedule of the final exam. Not my call, even a little bit. So, guys, a reminder, due November 13th, not the 11th, because we don't have assignments due on Mondays in this class. You have either the New York Times article exercise or the social media exercise we talked about a number of times. It's due on the 13th now, not the 11th, as per the terms of our collective bargaining agreement. Now, guys, I also was listening to some of the comments in the last class or two and started doing some digging on people who had decertified unions. So I'm going to show a video for you of a gentleman who participated in a union decertification, speaking his mind why he chose to go that route, why the union chose to decertify, the union members chose to decertify it. In the spirit of disclosure, the gentleman who's speaking, this YouTube video was taken from an anti-union website, a group that promotes anti-union causes. So when you hear this, it is definitely going to be from that perspective. That is in the spirit of disclosure. I encourage you to make up your own minds on these things. I will not tell you if you should like or dislike unions, but you need to know that kind of lens that to see this video so you're seeing the truth of it first. They separated from the national union. From the conversation, what were some of the things you sensed from this individual? What did he find as frustrating in terms of his existing relationship with his national union? Elliot.
Definitely there wasn't a lot of open communication with like dues and where all the proceeds and things were going. They didn't get that communication.
So lack of communication from national union to the local. Anything else you guys noticed from the way that this guy was speaking? What else? What were some of the big issues? Yes?
They were really listening to what they
Yeah,
had to say.
so the local is raising concerns. Do you remember what they were raising concerns particularly about? It was healthcare. You know, it's funny how that's a potential or perpetual hot button issue with labor at this point. So they're basically saying we're not getting any attention paid to us by the nationals. What else, Brian? You were going to comment as well.
You know, he just kind of was sick of all the bureaucracy.
So So the question is, we're having these dues taken out of our check. Where are they going? If we're paying for a new building to be built, asks me, I always have trouble pronouncing that labor union, what are we really getting out of this other than money taken out of our checks and a complete lack of transparency? Did you also notice they asked for an audit of where their dues were going? In any state of the union, you are, whether it's a right to work state or a non-right to work state, you as a dues paying member of your union can ask that your dues only get used for what purposes? There are two things that you can require that your dues get used for and nothing else. What are they? One's a G word. If you're upset, you file a grievance. Absolutely. And the other's a C word. Collective. You got it. So what they're basically saying is you're using all of our money to build your big halls and create raises for people, and we're seeing none of it. It's pretty interesting that you notice he also didn't say that we have a new union. He said we're trying to form a new union. Generally speaking, when you decertify a union, how much time do you have to wait before you pull in a new labor union? Generally speaking. Remember, we talked about it in the last class. What's the time period? It's usually a year. Now, if you can prove things like corruption and unfair labor practices, you can talk to the NLRB and they will make exceptions. But generally speaking, it's a period of 1 year. So pretty interesting that there's even a movement for independent unions, for example. You remember we talked in the last class as well. Are independent unions or unions affiliated with the AFL-CIO having a better success rate in elections? Who is it? Independents or affiliates? It's independents are having a better success rate in terms of getting into shops at this point in time. Interesting stuff. So guys, we're going to jump in with collective bargaining today. We're going to be moving at a pretty good clip, but we're hopefully going to have some room for discussion as well. Really, what collective bargaining means is that you have made a choice to bargain as a collective unit. And instead of one person coming and bargaining with the employer for a raise or a contract, we together have certified somebody to be our collective bargaining unit. And these, for example, are how we resolve what we refer to as interest disputes. So, for example, if we feel our wages should be higher, do most employers want to raise wages for anybody? No. If you're an employer, your main point is to exist and to make profit. Now, well-run companies will give raises and incentives so that people will work harder, better, more efficiently, but this happens a lot of the time. So what is success in collective bargaining? If you're the union, success in collective bargaining is getting better benefits, better pay, better working conditions for your rank and file. The subjective point of view here is really better finances, better financial value for your members. It does come down to dollars and cents when we start talking about collective bargaining. So when it comes down to bargaining structure, people who are choosing to bargain as a collective can exert power over an employer. So, for example, if we were a union and we were bargaining against St. Francis University, we're a teachers union, for example, we could hopefully exert some kind of power and have a better bargaining outcome. So, the flip side of it, if you're the employer and you're having to negotiate en masse, in addition to the fact that it makes your bargaining more complicated, you may also be put in a pressure position. What is the biggest pressure position that a union can exert on an employer? If the union does not get what it wants, what can a union do? Exactly correct. That's your biggest leverage point. We also get into something we call pattern bargaining. And that means, for example, we have the United Auto Workers who just finished up, for example, bargaining with GM. And who are they bargaining with now? Who are they completing their bargaining round with at this point? What other car company? Who? There's a big three. So there's Ford, GM, and Fiat Chrysler, soon to be Fiat Chrysler Peugeot, whatever the name of that new company ends up being. GM was the first out of the gate. GM had to deal with a month of shutdowns. Now all of a sudden, Ford's process went a little bit more easy. This is what we refer to as pattern bargaining, and it comes down to the idea that after one group bargains, one group, i.e. one union, bargains with one employer, they may go for similar terms with another type of employer. Now, anytime we get into collective bargaining, you can be one employer and you can have multiple unions within the same place. A great example is a healthcare provider. For example, at the UPMC, our local hospital, the RNs belong to their own union. the folks who work in physical and occupational therapy have their own union because they have different terms and conditions. So you can have one employer who has one union, you can have one employer who has multiple unions, you can have one employer that has multiple locations and multiple unions. It can be very complicated because you've got all of these folks who also can act in solidarity as well. Let me give you an example. If the nurses at UPMC went on strike, the occupational therapists might also go out with something we call a sympathy strike, which means they're showing solidarity with the demands of the other union to say, we're going to back you up too, to help you exert pressure onto our collective employer. So that can happen too, guys. That's all part of collective bargaining. Now, what is actually the bargaining unit means, what is the appropriate bargaining unit? So, if we are the nurses union, UPMC Altoona, they are members of Service Employees International, SEIU, Service Employees International Union. So that is their appropriate bargaining unit for the nurses in Altoona Hospital. It might not be an appropriate bargaining unit for the occupational therapists or the radiation techs or the physicians for that matter. That is a distinct and appropriate bargaining unit. So for example, if we had folks who were from other professions trying to join that union in that hospital, the National Labor Relations Board would likely come back and say that those folks should not be a part of this union. This is not an appropriate bargaining unit for that part of the union. So what it comes down to basically, guys, is that the more that we centralize our power, the better position employees generally are in for bargaining. So what it comes down to, guys, if you've got companies that are larger and more diverse, they're sometimes less subject to the power of unions than companies that work within a single industry. Why might that be? If you've got a diverse company that has many different forms of outreach versus a very specialized company, and you've got unions in both, why might the more diverse company be less vulnerable to leverage of unions? And I might not be asking the question well. Let's think about a diverse company. If you take somebody, for example, like Amazon, who makes and sells lots of things. What's Amazon's primary business? E-commerce. Yeah, they sell stuff, but do they do other things as well? Yeah, they do hosting. They do enterprise-level software. They're a very diverse company if you look underneath the hood. Now let's compare those to a company like UPMC. What does UPMC do? Yeah, they're healthcare. They have a very specialized industry with fewer types of different people working at a given facility than most likely work for a large, diverse company. If one union strikes within UPMC, for example, that can have a very significant impact over multiple locations. Amazon, however, because they've got diverse forms of revenue, is less vulnerable to one form of strike. Does that make sense, guys? So when you get into the idea of diverse companies and conglomerates versus very specialized companies, and so again, guys, when you get into to companies like the United, I disagree with our text on this one, by the way. The United Auto Workers, because they cover employers in multiple places and multiple employers, our text would say that reduces union negotiating power. I disagree. I think if you're the United Auto Workers and you are controlling multiple companies and you've got distributed power over multiple corporations, I would argue that actually increases your bargaining power because you can shut multiple people down at the same time. All right, guys, in terms of a practice that still happens behind closed doors but is technically illegal, it's called lock-in agreements. And it means that, for example, let's say we had the United Auto Workers who were going on strike and they decided, for example, GM is their first target and we are going to hit GM, we're going to hit Ford, we're going to hit Chrysler all at the same time. If these unions, for example, have what we refer to as a lock-in agreement where nobody's going to settle until everybody gets what they want, technically they're breaking the law. That's technically a form of racketeering or price fixing if you're basically going locking arms saying you've got to settle all these things before we settle any of them. If you want to know why, for example, that Ford was the second target, not the first, why didn't the United Auto Workers just target all the companies at the same time? It's because that's technically illegal. On the same token, if you've got multiple unions in the same company and everybody decides to go on strike all at the same time until everybody gets what they want, that's another form of lock-in agreement. You're also breaking the law by that. Make sense so far? Something that is legal, however, is leapfrogging. So, for example, what we did in terms of Ford and the United Auto Workers were basically trying to look at what GM and the United Auto Workers negotiated to set the terms of the contract. So, leapfrogging is legal, lock-ins are not. Do you guys understand the difference? Make sense so far, guys? Okay. Guys, we also have something called the whipsaw bargaining strategy. I love that. That sounds like something really violent, like that kind of, we're going to whipsaw somebody. What would a whipsaw look like? Like, you guys are D&D guys, so doesn't that sound like a weapon you use in like a D&D game? Like it's a whip with a saw on the end of it. That would be like the best video game weapon ever. But what it means is basically, if an employer has one bargaining agreement that they already have in place, and they try to use that with another union to be able to negotiate. So we got this agreement with this union that was very favorable to us. We're going to try to take the same agreement and whipsaw it onto somebody else. I love that term. So it's something that employers try to do. Why wouldn't you? If you got a good deal and you made it work, why wouldn't you? The other part of this too, guys, another concept to be able to know, that once you've started, if you're the employer, however, if you are involved with bargaining with unions or a single union, for example, once you've started bargaining, once you've entered in good faith into a bargaining process where you're trying to determine the terms of this contract, you can't pull out. You cannot withdraw from that kind of a scenario once you've already gotten in. Before we get into some of the finer points of how you build a team, I'd like to stop for a question or a comment. Question or comment to get us going today. Not only with that laptop screen, it looks like you're sitting in front of a fire. Like you got like a hat on and a hoodie, and it's like I feel like you should be warming your hands over that laptop or something. I got a solo stove. Anybody have you ever seen these things? They're like a aluminum, stainless aluminum like brushed stove, and you can set this up in this room and start a fire, and it wouldn't scorch the carpet the way it distributes the heat. If you guys get cold, I'll bring it in here. We'll build a fire. We'll make some s'mores. Maybe make some mountain pies. It'd be great. Everybody have a good time. With that being said, I need a question or comment from somewhere in the room before we continue. Who has a question or comment they would like to ask or make? EJ, were you raising your hand? What would you like to ask? I want to try that, man. I don't want to get stabbed for it though. Like I thought, did you see how they marketed it? Like the idea that you could get it on Sundays. Did you see that ad? What did you think about that? I thought that was a smart advertising campaign too, because they went to the roadside stand, put open on Sundays right next to Chick-fil-A, closed Sundays. Yeah, I won't want that, but I don't know when I'm going to get to try one. What do you think they're putting in that makes them so amazing? I can't wait to try it. What's that? Yeah, we're going to discover.
Cannibals you don't know.
We're going to discover. You know what they put in there? They probably put like Chick-fil-A employees in there. It's ground up Chick-fil-A employees. That's what it is. It's people. So, all right. Well, I cannot wait to try the Popeye's chicken sandwich. I'm very excited about it. All right. Let's say, guys, we're getting ready. We're getting ready to get into our negotiations. We've got, for example, our union here. We've got our management over here. It's time for us to try to negotiate a contract. Guys, before I get into any of the finer points and the technical stuff, when we start negotiating about things that we want, has anybody here ever had to wheel and deal over a price in your life? Raise your hand if you've done that. What are the challenges of bargaining? Yes?
Well, it's like you obviously don't want to pay like what they're asking because they're always going to ask for more than what it's worth. You don't want to offer too low or else then you look like a jerk. You got to kind of hit that sweet spot where they'll cave after like one or two, back and forths. It's a process. It's a skill.
So if I ask for something and you give it to me too easy, what lesson did I just learn?
You're weak.
I should have asked for more too. I should have asked for more. And the person who gave it to me easily, maybe they're smarter than I think they are because they got a good deal and I could have got more out of it. So bargaining is difficult because you got to know if we're in a continuum. In fact, Jason, can you stand up for a second? Let's say Jason and I are coming at this issue from different sides. right now. And right here in between us, we've got a classic car here. This is a 1977 Pontiac Firebird with the Turbo 400 engine. It's a 6.6 liter. This is a legendary car. Adam knows this car, don't you? Yeah, it's a desirable car, is it not? This one's mint condition. Jason owns it. And he's asking, what are you asking for this car? It's a classic, man. It's mint. It's got 12,000 miles on it.
Oh, I have no idea. How old is it?
It's a 77. It's classic.
100,000. I don't
He's
know.
asking for $100,000. I'm going to go to my buddy Adam who knows cars. Is this too much? I mean, it's mint. I'm still going to try to lowball him a little. Because what I really want to pay for this car, what I really want to pay is about $45,000. He's asking $100,000. So I'm going to make him counter offer. I'll give you $65,000 for it. What are you going to say?
It's like 85.
All right. How about 70?
35.
72.5.
Splitting hairs here, but all right.
Okay, we got a deal?
Sure.
All right, we got a deal. And so the point is, thank you for getting up at it. If I had gone lowball, if I'd offered you $20,000 for that car, what would you have done?
Walk away.
You'd have walked away because you realized I was not serious. I was acting in bad faith. If I had offered you asking price for that car, what would you have done? Absolutely. And what would I have done after I walked away? I'd kicked myself in the ass saying I should have been a more stringent bargainer. That's exactly the essence of collective bargaining. You got what the seller wants, you got what the buyer wants. In this case, we've got company versus employees. Generally speaking, the more people you get involved in a bargaining team, the more complicated it gets. Why? Who here has ever done a group assignment, guys? Yeah, what's hard about group assignments? Everything. You got personalities, you got varying work ethics, you got people who maybe don't work well together. You should really try to go no more than about 9 people on your bargaining team. You may say to yourself, well, we're going to violate that rule when we do this exercise. Yes, we are, because we are a bigger class than that. But generally speaking, you want to have no more than 9 team members, but you got to match the other team as well. If you've got one other team, if you got the company that's coming with 15 people and you're showing up with 5, even psychologically, you seem to be outmatched. You want to match power with power on this stuff. In terms of who you would want involved, if you're management, you don't want just suits there. When I say suits, who am I talking about? In a company, if I refer to somebody as a suit, what am I talking about? I'm talking about upper management. I'm talking about C-suite people, CEO, CFO, CIO. You don't want just suits showing up generally. Why is that? The people in the expensive suits always know what's really happening in the company. They do not. So if you want people who are line managers, people who actually understand the business, that shows that you got some credit. When you start negotiating with these members of the union who actually work there, you got to have people who understand what those people do for a living and vice versa. So you also want to pick people who are good negotiators. Guys, what makes for a good negotiator? In your eyes, if you had to have somebody to walk into a high-stress situation and to be able to negotiate a deal, what personality characteristics would you want that person to have? Yes? Tell me more about that. I love that answer. Yeah, because we don't want to seem weak, right? So confidence. What else? Yes?
Person who knows when to walk away.
Tell me more about that.
So, like, if the deal's just not there, instead of being that person that's trying to find a deal that might not help the company, you know that you're just going to walk away and come back to it later.
So sometimes it's time to just cool off and cooler heads prevail. Yes?
Also, stubborn.
Tell me more.
Well, you're not always going to get what you want right away, but you kind of have to stick by your guns and just
Somebody's going to stay on message, for example. And some other characteristics, too. People who also can be flexible. People who you've empowered to actually make deals. If you send me to negotiate for your company or for your union, and I can't really stand by anything I'm saying, I have no business being a negotiator. I have to have some power to be able to improvise when that comes up, too. You've got to have people who can also, as the text states, keep their emotions and their opinions in check. And what that means is you can't always be able to pull down your poker face and get angry. That's a trick with an argument too, guys. Generally speaking, people who get angry, if you're ever in an argument, if you can keep your cool and not be the first person who raises their voice, you've got a better chance at winning the argument. You guys agree with me on that? Can you think about a time when you either won or lost an argument? Beside your knowledge of the facts, and beside the fact that you might have been right, why did you win or why did you lose? Anybody think of a time? Oh, I can think. I'll give you an example from my personal life. I worked for a guy who I had a great relationship with. He's still a friend today. He was having a bad day. And he actually, in a dispute that we had within our company, I worked for this man, insulted me on the phone and called me a liar. Like, I'm many things in this world. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I was not lying to this man. I'm not a liar. Every part of me wanted to march down to his office, get in his face and say, you know, how dare you? How do you have the blanks to call me that? Instead, I cooled down, I waited, and I did walk down to his office, and I did say what I had to say, and I did it in a way that was very calm and respectful, and basically asked him, why would you say these things about me after the working relationship we had? This guy, who was a very shrewd negotiator, a very powerful man, actually gave me an apology. And it's something I didn't expect, and I think I got the apology because I didn't blow up, and because I didn't feed into the anger he was already putting out. So that's a key negotiation skill. The other side is you may walk into arguments and no matter what you say, you're going to lose. Trust me, if you can deal with that, you're ready for marriage. It's just the way it works sometimes. I know I make lots of marriage comments, but there's other things going on. That might touch both ways. It's not a male-female thing. If you're a good negotiator, yeah, I'm giving marriage advice all day, folks. If you are able to say no, you've got to be able to stand your ground. I love the point that we have to exude confidence. For example, you have to be able to think on your feet. And the other thing, too, guys, some of this bargaining can go on for days. If you ever see some of the old films, the United Auto Workers negotiations, for example, some of these guys are up 18, 20 hours solid, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee to try to get this done under a deadline. You've also got to understand the idea of how to save face. For example, you may walk into a meeting and discover that what you were saying was wrong. You were mistaken. You got to save face somehow, and that means, yes, sometimes you have to admit a mistake, but do it in such a way where you are still carrying respect. The other part of it, too, comes down to, guys, there also has to be a room for some tension breaking and humor. Even in the most tense negotiations, sooner or later somebody's going to crack a joke, and it's okay to laugh because it shows you're human. These are all things that make us good negotiators and people who we can make good deals. So in terms of ways that we know what we're walking in with, we are going into one of these negotiations. If we've got other people in industry who work in similar paths that we do, what kind of luck did they have? Guys, what was the biggest hot issue that we talked about with the United Auto Workers and GM? What was their number one issue? The thing that they wanted to preserve for the union more than anything. You remember? I'll give you a hint. Something that matters more to me than you guys. You got it. Absolutely correct. And so if you're seeing, for example, the other people in related industries to you, if you're the union, they've had very successful times negotiating health care that was favorable to their members, that's something you're going to take note of. Well, if we're in here, let's say we're Caterpillar, for example. What does Caterpillar make? They make yes?
They make certain equipment that helps with construction.
Yeah, they don't make butter. They make like lots of.
I said butterflies.
Okay, I was going to say. I thought I heard you say butter, and it's like they don't make butter. They make heavy machinery, you know. But yeah, cows make butter. Amish make butter. They do it all the time. The Amish do all kinds of crazy
You ever
things.
actually churn butter?
I never
Oh
have.
my god, it takes forever.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, you know. There's Amish. They pay a lot to live tax free. They churn their own butter. They have to shave off the mustache, keep the rest of the beard. They got to wear those damn outfits and all year round, and they don't put zippers on their clothing. Did you know that the Amish have a disposition against zippers? I'm not really sure. So they're against zippers, and they're in bathing and other things too. But that being said, let's get back to Caterpillar. if you're Caterpillar and you just watch the United Auto Workers negotiate their deal, for example, you might be saying, well, even though we're heavy industry and they're commercial cars and trucks, it's still a related industry with similar skill sets in our manufacturing plants. We should be looking at what they got in their deal to see if we can get it in our deal as well. Or if you're Mahindra, who also makes competing equipment to Caterpillar, that'd be even a closer analogy, for example. What did we get the last time we negotiated? For example, what kind of deal did we get? You remember GM, the employees from the United Auto Workers went back to one of their previous labor agreements from what era? Why were they so upset about not getting raises? Because when was the last time they had negotiated a significant agreement? You remember? Right after what? Right after the world economic crisis of 2008, and all those workers had accepted wage freezes, basically to say, we're going to help GM weather the storm, get out of this predicament we're in. And what they're saying at that point, we're looking back at the time period and the negotiations we have, it's a different era, we can do things differently this time too. You might look at your grievances as well. If you've been mistreated the last couple of years, or if people are complaining about safety conditions, that stuff should be factoring into your negotiating position. And you also might be just, if you're not doing the second from the bottom, if you're not listening to your employees, then you're going to find yourself in the wrong end of a decertification vote at some point. So in terms of contracts themselves, has anybody here ever, I know this is a long shot, and whether it was in a class or in your personal life, has anybody here ever had to actually read the terms and conditions of a significant contract? Anybody ever had to? Elliot, Summer, what kind of contract, if you don't mind me asking?
What was like the bylaws from the
And that's significant verbiage too. How long are your bylaws?
very long.
Yeah. So yes.
I once had to fill out an NDA. Oh my gosh.
Good times. How many pages was that?
15.
And an NDA, for anybody who's never heard the term, is a non-disclosure agreement, and that means that you're agreeing to not speak about certain terms and conditions outside of an era. Was it for your brewery?
No, it was for Popcorn Buddha. I used to make gourmet popcorn.
Popcorn Buddha? I've never heard of this.
Unfortunately, the one up home has closed, but they have their shop set up back in Missouri, where they grow all the corn. Super cool stuff.
Wow. Well, so the point is, when you're reading long, significant contract verbiage like this, the better and easier you make it for people to understand, the better that your rank and file is going to actually understand it. So using long and legalese types of terms are not good for these kinds of contracts. So the more clear and specific and quantifiable you can be, the better off you are. There's a saying we use in the business, and business in general. We don't get what we deserve, we get what we negotiate. What does that mean? Anybody know? We don't get what we deserve, we get what we negotiate. What does that mean? Yes, Corey.
Basically, like, if you negotiate poorly, if you like bid too low, bid too high, then you might not get a deal, you might get a poor deal. So basically,
It is, and it comes down in business as well. If you don't write it down, it didn't happen. And what that means is, guys, you've got to be very specific on what you're asking for. You've already got a sort of what I would refer to as an adversarial relationship to some extent. If you're in a collective bargaining unit and you're going up against a company, meaning people are going to be out to get whatever they can get. You've got to be very clear in what it is you want. You've got to be very clear and quantifiable, just like a contract. If you miss it in the contract, at some point in time, it may come back to bite you in the ass. It's the same deal when you're working on bargaining language for this sort of stuff. This is a pretty good approximation of what happened between Jason and I in terms of our negotiation that we were doing up here. We had, for example, management has their idea of what they want to happen. The union has their idea of what they want to happen. We're talking ultimate goals here. If I can get everything I want, if I'm management, I can get all my employees for minimum wage, no health care, no benefits, and no days off, and they're going to work overtime every single day that I ask them to without giving me any guff. If I'm the union, I'm going to work 2 days a week. I'm going to get my birthday off with pay. I'm going to get a new car every year, and I'm going to have health care until I'm 200 years old. In reality, we come out somewhere in the middle here. In terms of what we're willing to give, we have what we refer to as a resistance point. From here on out, we're most likely not going to get any real movement until we hit this resistance point. Same with the union. When we hit this middle part, the bargaining range, that means we get into give or take. So the union's target, for example, might be to get to here. Management's target might be to get to here. How much ground are we going to give? Who's going to blink first? It's classic negotiation, just like you would for the price of a car. So that being said, guys, here's an example of what people might want and where we might get into the actual range. I was being very facetious with my previous statement. So management, for example, has a couple ideas. We'll give you a 60-cent an hour raise, and we'll give you a minor repairs clause in the contract, meaning you can have extra money for doing minor repairs on machines, or 50 cents an hour in a minor clause or minor repairs clause. The union, however, wants 80 cents an hour plus a union shop provision, so that we can basically say you got to be a member of the union, or we can get to 95 cents an hour raise without the guarantee of having a union shop. Usually, this will fall somewhere in the middle, meaning management's got to bend on this stuff, and the union's got to bend on this stuff. Who's setting the priority for what the union is going to give on? If you have a labor union representing you, who's ultimately making the decision on what we're going to give and take on? Is it going to be the negotiating team? Or is it going to be the rank and file? What do you think?
The reps.
Well, the reps are going to make the call, but you better be representing the sentiment of the rank and file. And the rank and file, if you're all in the union, and I'm your rep, and you guys have told me our number one priority is health care, and I go after wages instead, you guys going to be happy with me? You're not going to be unhappy that you got a raise, but you're going to be unhappy if you didn't get to keep the health care that you wanted to keep. Again, this stuff falls out in the middle. And guys, this is a good place for us to stop for today. So I will see you again on Friday. Enjoy this wonderful sunny day. And how many of you are traveling for competition on Friday? Quite a few of you, I believe. Travel safe, guys. Good luck.